We're back again, and my name is Lavas. I'm here to give you a snippet of my life, and it's a book that I'm writing in on audio form or video format and this is the book we're actually listening to. And as there's an adage that goes that if you want to hide something from an African, put it in a book, because we are not cultured in reading. We are not cultured in reading, but reading is very good. I encourage each and every one of you to read, especially the younger generation. You need to read wide. It is good for you, and your mind is open wide. And because there's a lot of junk on the internet, there's a lot of junk on the social media. You can feed yourself with wrong information and wrong stuff that can destroy you or that can mislead you. Or you can spend a lot of time entertaining thoughts and ideas and stuff that will not develop your life. That's the danger of focusing much on social media, especially on the entertainment platform, where there's a lot of hate speech as well on the internet, and people are spending time in attacking each other. Life has more to offer. You don't need to spend your time listening to all negative stuff. You need to invest in positivity. You need to invest in things that can transform your life, in things that can change your life, because life is more to offer. So this is a book that I am writing in parts. So I'll be giving you some chapters in the audio, in the video format, audio and video, or in visual, in visual form. So I want to take you back to where it all began. So the journey of my life started in 1981 when I was born. I'm not so sure whether it was 1981 or 82. The year of my birth is not known. It's not clear, rather. All along, I grew up knowing that I was born in 1981, but 2021, 2021, I just learned, it was the end of last year of 2021, I just learned that my actual year of birth is not 1981, but 1982. But well, the story is something else for another day. And the date of my birth as well is not known. The one that is on my birth certificate is an estimation, because my father is said to have passed on in July, and I was born shortly after his passing on. So when I was born 1981 or 82, my father had already gone, he had died, and my mom was there to raise us through. But that was not the case anyway. So before my father passed on, he had three wives. So the first wife and the second and the third. So I'm from the middle wife, the second wife. And the first wife, my father had 7 children that I know of. And my mom had 7 children that I know of, and this third wife had a child, so we were 15 in total. So out of those 15, I was the last one. I was the 15th one to be born. So when he passed on, it was hell. Hell broke loose when he passed on. While he had some means of survival, he was stable economically. From the rural perspective and from the countryside point of view, he had means of income. He had quite significant amount of resources in terms of animals, in terms of cattle, goats, and all those. And I recall vividly some of the cattle that we used to grow, knowing and the goats that we used to. He also owned some donkeys and stuff like that. But somehow I see some pictures of horses, but I don't know. I don't know he ever owned a horse, but there's just some pictures. Probably it's a donkey, or they're donkeys that I have some pictures of. And when he passed on, uh, I also recall a radio, a beautiful stereo radio that will play, those records that long play, big, not the smaller version of it, the CDs that we call, that we have these days, but the records, the big records there. He had a beautiful radio, which had its own stand fixed to it, and he also owned a boat. So he used to be a fisherman as well in Kariba. So that's what I recall about my father. And there's no picture. There was only one picture that existed, only one picture, which was black and white, and I couldn't even see the face clearly. So I don't know the face of my father when he passed on. During those days, back in the days, there wasn't any photographing allowed to. I mean, he wasn't exposed rather into photographing and pictures back in the days. There was little exposure to that, but the one that I had, somebody stole it from me, so I don't have it. I don't know where it is right now. So, but I couldn't even relate. I don't know how he looked like really. So, and my mom got married again. She remarried, uh, and the person that comes after me is born in 1984. When she left, when she got married again, I think what then transpired before my mom got married again, all the women my father had, the wives of my father were all chased away by my uncles and stuff like that, and because they refused, I guess, the customary, the cultural inheritance program that you can then uh, get married to the younger brother or the older brother. Of course, my father was the firstborn, so he had his own siblings, about five of them, four of them rather. So my father, being the firstborn, there were other four brothers that he had that came after him that I know of, that I've seen, and they were just only boys as far as I remember and know. So my mom, because of I think economic hardships and life was so hard for her, the only option she had was to get married and have somebody to look after her. She didn't have means of survival, of income, and I think she went to the farming area, to the communal farming areas there to also work and be able to earn a living, and that's where she met my stepfather, and they lived together and gave birth to two children, the two girls. So the first one is of 1984 and the second one 1987. So clearly, when she left, she wasn't allowed to go with any of the children. She left us. So when we were left behind by my mom, I think I was around the age of 2 or 3. I was very young, very, very young, to be away from a parent, to be away from a mom. And that's when the whole problems began and started. And then we were left in to stay with the firstborn in the family from the first wife. And the torture, the gruesomeness is so vivid in my mind, what we went through, how life was so hard and difficult in the hands of these people, especially my guru, especially my brother's wife. My brother's wife was um sorry, become so emotional, so emotional, so emotional. I suffered all forms of abuse that exist on earth, all forms of abuse that you know of. I suffered physical abuse, I suffered mental abuse, I suffered social abuse, I suffered sexual abuse, I suffered all forms of abuse that exist on earth that I know of in the hands of this woman. She was trying her best, I understand. And I was also with my brothers from my father. So, and she had also had all her own children, 3 boys and the 3 of us. So we were 6 boys and other girls also that we were with together, 2 of my sisters from my father and her own also daughters. So we were quite a lot, we were quite a number of us staying together. And we shared one blanket, the 3 of us with my brothers. And we really never put on clothes, to be honest. The clothes that were there were second, I don't know, not even second. They were really tatters. They were in tatters. They were pieces. Like you'd literally sit on your bums. You'd really sit on your buttocks on the floor, direct on the floor. And the lies, there's this they're what do you call it? This small blood suckers called lies. They were all over us, all over our bodies. We had all forms of diseases like communicable diseases, contact, skin contact diseases like we call it mezi in Shona. I can't remember of an English word. And chicken pox and all those. We no diseases that will pass by, that will come and pass by, would have an experience of that kind of a disease. And when it comes to working in the field, we were hardworking. We used to farm wheat. Yeah. We used to farm cotton, a lot of cotton back in the days. We used to farm soybeans, not wheat, soybeans. And we also had a garden that we would go early in the morning, around 4 a.m., 3 a.m., 4 a.m. we would wake up and go to the garden before we had the direction to school. The school was about 7 kilometers away from home. The garden was about 5 kilometers, 3 to 5 kilometers away from home, the opposite direction to school. So we'd go to the garden early in the morning to water the garden. That was our survival. Without doing that, then it will mean worse situation for us. So we had to do it, and I was very, very young. I remember having a big dent on top of my head because there was a particular pot, big pot that I used to carry at the garden there to water the garden, and it will leave a huge dent because my scalp wasn't strong enough to hold um, such such heavy load on it. So I would have a dent all the time on top of my scalp, on top of my head there. And also after schooling would go into the fields and look after cattle. So there are a lot of pictures, there are a lot of snippets involved overlapping each other. So I'll be going to and fro, trying to give the picture of my childhood, what transpired, what happened. So there used to be a lot of misunderstanding, or rather, it was part of the abuse as well. The children of my brother were of the same age. Three of them were of the same age. The first one was even older than me, and then the other two brothers were almost the same age. So they were twins. So what used to happen back in the days is that if we have a fight, I would be if at all I fight back, I'll be in trouble by the mother. So I wouldn't fight back. I could just be beaten and not be able to fight back, because if I fight back, then that means trouble for me. That means trouble for me. And she'll be there to make sure that I'm not fighting back. At some point, I remember she was like a refereeing to make sure that I don't fight back. And I remember one of the days when I got sick. It was sort of a dream. In my dream, I dreamt one of my ears having been shrugged off. There was no ear in the dream. And then during that night when I woke up, there was pain in that particular ear, torturing pain. And it went on for 2 years, 4 years. It was torturing, very painful, pricking. And we would try by all means to make it better, but the pain couldn't go away. If you try to put something inside like liquid, it'll be like a pan, a hot pan, and then if you pour water on that hot pan, or if you put oil in that hot pan, especially water, the sound it produces, that's what the ear was like. It was burning, really burning. And if you put something, it will make that burning sound, like something responding to the heat. And yeah, so that's the basic background that I can give you there. And then in addition to the abuse that I'm talking about, I suffered all forms of sexual abuse from the close relatives, very close, very close. They abused me sexually. I was just maybe grade 1 or even before going to school. Back then, I suffered sexual abuse, and it was so bad. It was so nasty. About school, I was almost a forgotten child in terms of going to school. My mom, she was staying close at some point, and she used to snatch me behind doors. She used to take me behind doors. Um, trying to steal us from those people. She would come, try to steal us away, and the soon that information is heard, by the uncles that my mom has taken us to where she was, then it will become really a fight, a war, and she would quickly give up and we'll go back to the environment. The uncles never stayed with us. They never really contributed anything meaningful to us, to our existence, to our life, to our betterment. They were just having their own lives, but they never contributed anything that I know of or remembered. All I know, what we earn, what we ate, the life we lived, we earned it ourselves. We worked very hard. We worked in the fields. We worked in the garden. We would go and do extra shifts to farm in other people's fields in order for us to earn a living, in order for us to get some fees. My sister, Winzenai Pamire, was at least working at some point, and she would really send us some clothes. She was in the city of Harare, she was in Banget, one of the mining towns in Mashonaland West there. And at some point she was in Chinoy and then Harare. She would send some clothes for us to help for some upkeep and stuff like that. Many times would go to school barefooted and with no uniform. I never put on a uniform throughout my school days, even a secondary. I never put on a proper school uniform. I don't know what a uniform looks like. I know how it looks like, but I don't know how it feels to put on a uniform on my body throughout these days of my schooling. So I would simply get second-hand uniform that will not even match, a short and a shirt that will not be matching, and just to get something similar to the school uniform, and at a very, very cheap and affordable price, because I couldn't afford to buy a uniform throughout my days at school. When I was 9 years old, that's when I managed to start going to school. Around 8, 9, that's when I got a chance to go to school with the help of my mom. She fought very hard for me to be able to go to school. Otherwise, the children of my age all were going to school, and I was I was left out. I was left out and I was missing out. I got really stressed. I thought my life was doomed. I did not see myself. I never saw myself going to school, attending schooling. But God really had a way for me. So throughout my years at school, I was the oldest in class. And it was really torturing. It was painful. It was embarrassing. The people, my schoolmates, the peoples I was with would laugh at me. I couldn't even, because in class you'd stand up and introduce yourself. You have to mention also your date of birth or how old you are, and then everyone will get on the floor laughing at you. Oh, you're old. You're too old. You're too old. You shouldn't be here, like in our class. You should be somewhere in some other classes ahead of us. So that was my life throughout. And I did not give up. I continued to be determined. I continued to be a determined person. So 1992, it was a famine year. It was a drought year. We had no rains the previous year, and that meant to say that the year of 1992, there was a lot of hunger, starvation. There was no food in the grain markets. There was nothing, absolutely nothing to eat in the country, especially to us, the rural folks. It affected us a lot. And what then happened was we would go into the forest to look for food, natural foods, that is. So there were particular trees that would get something, some seeds from, and be able to boil those seeds, and or if they're dry, would roast them and eat, and that would be our food. I recall one of the days we traveled to a far distant land, to a far distant place with my brothers to look for small seeds called ngi. It will be coming from a big tree. It's a huge tree, and in that tree it will have small tiny grains like fruits, wild fruits. And then we traveled to that far end, and my brother collapsed along the way. He collapsed because of hunger. Then we had to be rescued by some people. In that same token, I recall one of the days we were in the field herding cattle, and we were playing football in one of the pastures, the football that we used to play in the fields there. And I couldn't carry on playing. I didn't have the energy, so I was standing by the gate, the football gate. And then the next thing, I found myself on the floor. I also collapsed of hunger. That's how bad it was. And when it was time for mangoes, we did not even wait for the mango tree. The mango tree, we did not wait for the mangoes to really be ready and ripe. I don't think that year the mangoes really got to their ripening stage. We would really boil them in their tender stage so that we eat and we have something to eat. And in that same year, 1992, I got sick also with tonsillitis to a death point, really. It was so bad, and I was doing grade 3 in 19 I was doing grade 2, 1992. 1992. Yeah, I was doing grade 3 instead, I think. Should be grade 3. I got sick with tonsillitis. I couldn't eat. I couldn't go to school. I couldn't eat anything. And the food will be left in front of me, and the kids, the children of my brother, of my guru, of my brother's wife will just come and take it. And in addition to that, I'll be asked to go and look after the cattle in the field. And I didn't have the energy and the strength to walk, to do anything, because I couldn't eat anything to give me energy. I just got flat, lights out, flat, lying on the floor with no energy. I was just as good as dead. And my mom had a dream. She was now staying far away, quite far away from us, with the stepfather and with her family. And she had a dream, my father telling her to go and look after the children, particularly the dream was so vivid to her. It gave her clear instructions what to do, and she did exactly like that as she had dreamt. And she came in the company of another relative from where she was staying, because it was a family rural area she had moved to, and staying there, she now had her own peasant farm there. So they came together. They walked barefoot all the way. It was quite a distant, maybe 50 kilometers or 60 kilometers or even more, maybe 80. Should be 80, more than 80 kilometers of walking distance. She walked all the way to come to where I was or where we were. And she found me almost dead. All she could simply do was to take a piece of a cooking stick and put it here inside of my mouth so that I don't bite it, your finger, and with some salt on her finger, she quickly crushed the tonsils, the inflamed tonsils, and that was it. From then, I never had problems with tonsillitis, and up to this very moment. That was the last time I had tonsillitis. And of course, I began to have other problems like abdominal pains, nose bleeding that wouldn't even stop. And we'll talk about that in the next chapter.